Chapter 1. Cracks in the Perfect Picture. I always thought our marriage was the kind that made people envy us. We met in law school, fell in love over shared textbooks and late-night coffees, and built a life full of ambition and laughter. We got married at 28, bought our first home in a quiet suburb, and within 3 years welcomed our son, Max. I had a career in publishing. He was rising fast in finance. We were active in our community, hosted dinner parties, took family vacations, the whole picture. To everyone else, we were perfect. I come from a large family, full of loud laughter and Sunday gatherings. My cousin, Rachel, was 3 years younger. She visited often, always had that mischievous spark in her eye. As we grew older, she moved away, but we stayed close on birthdays and holidays. She got married in another state and built her own life. We remained friends, but they had separate routines, separate lives. It began with subtle changes, little ones I ignored. He'd come home late, claiming overtime or business dinners. His phone went silent after 10 p.m. It was reasonable on its face. I didn't think twice, because trust was the solid foundation beneath us. Then came a message. It popped up in the middle of our living room. "We need more time together. I miss you." I asked who it was. He said it was a female friend from his hometown, someone I barely knew. I accepted it. After all, what harm was there? Weeks later, I noticed inconsistencies. When he called her name on the phone, his expression softened. He said things, at the dinner table, asleep on the couch, phrases like "my love," delivered absent-mindedly without catching himself. I questioned myself. Looking too deeply, I reminded myself. He must have been under pressure at work. I was hormonal, a busy mom. Maybe I was imagining it. My turning point came one evening when I saw a text on his phone as it slid off the couch. "I love you. Can't wait to see you tomorrow." I froze, breath hollow. I pressed snooze to keep the screen on. The contact name wasn't saved, just a number, but at the top it said, "Mom's B-Day reminder." A cruel joke. I scrolled through the notifications. Hundreds of messages from that number over months. I backed out silently. My vision tunneled. I slumped, heart pounding, auditioning anger and fear simultaneously. I didn't want to confront him yet. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. That night, I left home under the excuse of buying formula and took the little folder where Max's birth certificates and my passport were stored. I didn't wake him. I drove instead to my sister's house 2 hours away. I stayed there that night. I couldn't sleep. I considered involving the police. I considered divorce. I considered the unthinkable. But before anything, I needed proof. Solid evidence. The next morning, I called my husband's workplace, pretending to be HR carrying out a routine check. I requested records for his phone usage and travel for the past 3 months. Under pressure, his employer forwarded me a summary. Lines of data, flights, hotel bookings in another state, cars rented near a small town where my cousin lived. Everything matching his claimed business travel, but also aligning with dates her husband was away. My heart sunk. I called Rachel under the guise of planning a surprise for Max. She said she'd be home that weekend to celebrate. I asked who she would be visiting with. Her husband, she said. I smiled. Then I asked casually, "Your family?" "My husband's parents." She hesitated. Said her husband had a work trip unexpectedly. It felt off. I thanked her, ended the call, and slowly folded the phone. I realized the truth. Not long after, I visited the National Marriage Registries. I found a marriage record, same names, same birth dates, filed in another state. The address was an apartment just blocks from Rachel's house. My world fractured. The perfect marriage, the ideal family. They were built on a secret life. And he had a second family with her. That revelation set everything in motion. It was only a matter of time before I confronted them. Because I couldn't live in a life that wasn't mine, one half made of truth and the other built of betrayal. Chapter 2. The Confrontation. I stared at the marriage certificate printout for a long time before I could breathe again. My hands were trembling, and I realized I'd gone completely numb. A strange calm washed over me, like my body had decided to protect me from what my mind was still trying to reject. I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. This wasn't just some affair. This was another life. Another family. With my cousin. And it had been kept from me for God knows how long. I didn't confront him immediately. Not yet. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I told my sister I had to go on a quick work trip, asked her to watch Max for the weekend. She didn't ask many questions. I think she knew something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to speak the words out loud. I booked a flight to the city where Rachel lived. The same city where my husband had supposedly traveled for business on countless financial consulting assignments. I rented a car. I drove to the address listed on the secondary marriage certificate. My heart pounded harder the closer I got. I parked half a block away and waited in the car. It was an average suburban neighborhood, not unlike our own. Lawns trimmed. Bicycles in driveways. Normal. Innocent. But what I saw next shattered any illusions I had left. He walked out of the house. My husband. Wearing jeans and a t-shirt I'd never seen before. Carrying groceries in one hand, and in the other, holding a small boy's hand. The boy was maybe 4, maybe 5. Brown curly hair. His nose looked exactly like Max's. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, watching a man I thought I knew more intimately than anyone in the world smile down at a child I'd never met. Then she came out. Rachel. Laughing, tossing her hair over her shoulder, walking up behind them and kissing him. On the mouth. Brief. Familiar. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. He wrapped his arm around her waist. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not just from betrayal but from clarity. He wasn't living a double life because of some addiction, some loss of control. No. He had chosen this. He had actively built 2 entire realities, balancing them like a magician spinning plates, believing no one would ever look too closely. And we hadn't. We trusted him. I waited until they went inside before I drove away. That night, I checked into a hotel and stared at the ceiling for hours. At 2 a.m., I called a lawyer. At 2:15, I started writing a letter. I didn't want to scream or cry or break dishes. I wanted documentation. Facts. A trail. I wrote everything. The texts. The travel logs. The photo I snapped from my car. I wrote down everything I had discovered. His alternate marriage, the addresses, the timeline, the faces. I even printed the marriage certificate and tucked it into a folder with a sticky note that read, "For the courts. And our son." Then I wrote him a letter. Not to explain myself. Not to ask for anything. Just to say, you created this. You betrayed your son. Your wife. Your family. And the woman you did it with is my blood. You don't get to walk away without consequences. I booked a flight back home the next morning. When I arrived, I picked Max up from my sister's. I kissed him harder than usual. I told him everything was going to be okay, even though I wasn't sure what okay looked like anymore. The next day, my husband came home from his business trip. He kissed me on the cheek like always, set his suitcase by the door. He didn't notice I was watching him like he was a stranger. He didn't notice the folder on the kitchen counter. But the moment he opened it, I saw something break in his eyes. He didn't speak. I didn't either. He reached out, but I stepped back. "I know everything," I said calmly. "You have 24 hours to leave. You can go back to your other family, but you won't be juggling both anymore." He tried to explain, stammering, choking on excuses I didn't want. "I didn't mean to. It was complicated. I love you both." I raised my hand to stop him. "No," I said. "You don't get to love anyone until you understand what love actually means." He left. And I filed for divorce that week. Chapter 3, The Fallout. The days that followed were a haze of paperwork, attorneys, tears I refused to let Max see, and whispers. So many whispers. It didn't take long for the story to start spreading. I never planned on airing our dirty laundry, but secrets that deep don't stay buried, especially in a family like mine. Especially in a town like ours. Rachel, my cousin, the same girl who used to braid my hair during sleepovers, tried to reach out. She sent a text at first. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love him. I love our son. I hope you can find peace. Peace. She was hoping for peace? I didn't answer. I couldn't. There was nothing to say that didn't feel like screaming. The real explosion happened at my aunt's birthday party. I wasn't going to go, but my mother begged me. You need to show them you're not hiding, she said. You've done nothing wrong. So I went. The second I walked into the room, every head turned. Conversations dropped. My uncle nodded stiffly. A cousin tried to give me an awkward half-hug. Rachel wasn't there, thank God. But her parents were, standing in the corner looking like they wanted the ground to open and swallow them whole. I stayed for 20 minutes. Long enough to cut a slice of cake, smile at my mom, and give Max a hug before taking him home. Long enough for one of my cousins to ask, quietly but not quietly enough, "Is it true?" And when I didn't answer, she said it again. "I just don't get it. How do you not know your husband has another family?" I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't come from humor, but from sheer emotional exhaustion. I said, "You'd be surprised what people can hide when they look you in the eye and say they love you." That shut her up. What I didn't say, what I wanted to scream, was that I wasn't stupid. I was trusting. I was loyal. And I wasn't the one sleeping with her own blood relative behind everyone's back. The rest of the family began to take sides. Some cut off Rachel entirely. Others stayed weirdly neutral. My aunt, her mother, sent me a letter in the mail. A letter saying how confused and ashamed she was, but that she hoped we could all heal in time. You know what healing looks like? It looks like my son asking why Daddy doesn't come home anymore. It looks like trying to explain that his father still loves him, even if he's not living in our house, and doing it without letting your voice crack. It looks like finding a therapist, figuring out custody, selling your home, and trying to remember how to breathe. Chapter 4. Moving forward, kind of. The divorce went through faster than I thought it would. My lawyer was a beast, and once my husband realized how much evidence I had, he didn't fight. Not much anyway. We agreed on shared custody, though I insisted Max wasn't to be brought around Rachel. I couldn't stomach the idea of my child growing up around her. Not yet. Not after everything. He didn't argue. He had the audacity to cry, though. At the final meeting, he sat there across the table, tears in his eyes, and said, "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop." I stared at him for a long time. "You had 15 years, I said quietly. And a wedding. And a child. And 1,000 choices between now and then. You chose her every time. Don't insult me by pretending it was anything else." And that was the last real conversation we ever had. Sometimes Max talks about his weekends with Dad. Sometimes he slips and calls Rachel Auntie. I let it go. He's just a child. He didn't choose this. He didn't ask for this mess. But I've learned something important. We think we know the people we love. We think marriage is a fortress of truth, but sometimes it's just a well-decorated house with termites chewing through the walls. The rot is hidden until something collapses. And collapse it did. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still raising my son. Still learning that forgiveness isn't something you owe others. It's something you eventually gift yourself, once you're strong enough to walk away from the rubble without looking back. Let me know if you want a follow-up chapter where the cousin tries to insert herself into the child's life later on, or where the husband's second marriage begins to unravel.